Many people in your league have probably become very comfortable. They don't feel like they need to add anyone else to their roster. They think they have the best team. They're ready to win it all. Well, not you, because if you think that way, that means you're probably not going to win, because there's never a good time to get comfortable in fantasy football. You always have to be adding new players, stashing the next big breakout. You always have to be attacking the waiver wire. That's how you win it all. That's how you win a fantasy football championship. It's about outsmarting your friends. It's about getting ahead of the curve. It's about finding that next hidden gem that no one even knows about, that no one's even thinking about. That's what we're going to do for you. In this video, we are talking about 10 league-winning stashes that you need to be adding to your roster before week 11 of fantasy football. And this list features a running back whose role is only continuing to grow on one of the best offenses in football, along with a rookie receiver who could be the next big breakout the second half of the year. If you watch one video this week, it needs to be this one. All right, let's start with the first guy on this list, and it's Phil Mafah, rookie running back for the Dallas Cowboys. You probably never heard of him. He did flash in the preseason, and then he injured his shoulder, and he's been on IR ever since, but it looks like he's going to be activated off IR in the next couple of days. And this is a really fun player who's built like a Mack truck. He's 6 feet tall, 234 pounds. He's a downhill runner. He's hard to tackle. He has nice power and burst, especially for his size. And it's looking like Mafah is going to be the direct backup for Javonte Williams, which is pretty important, because if Javonte were to ever go down, you're looking at a running back on one of the best offenses in football taking over that role. Like, he could be potentially a league winner, because we know at this point the Cowboys hate Jaden Blue. They don't ever want to play Jaden Blue. He's never on the field. He's a healthy scratch almost every week. So we want the RB2 on this really good Cowboys offense if something were to ever happen to Javonte. And Phil was productive in his final year at Clemson, over 1,000 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, 5.2 yards per carry. He chipped in 21 receptions, over 100 yards. These are the type of players that you want to be adding on your roster now, that no one knows about, that no one's seen on an NFL football field. Get him on your team now if you have room at the bottom of your bench before he's activated, before he plays, before he shows everyone what he is capable of. And who knows, maybe Dallas wants to mix in the rookie running back. This is an upside stash if you have room. Mafah is currently rostered in 0% of sleeper leagues right now. So I will admit, this is a very extremely sneaky ad, but we've reached the point of the year where guys will come out of nowhere that no one's ever heard about and win fantasy football championships. All right, moving on to our next guy, Jayden Reed. This Packers offense needs Jayden back in the worst way right now. We know Reed has been out since week 2, suffering that broken collarbone. He was also dealing with the Jones fracture in his left foot, but is looking like he's going to return in the next couple of weeks. It could be next week. And this is a guy I would absolutely be stashing on my bench right now, because once he gets back out on the football field for the Packers, he is going to have a massive role on an offense that is hurting for playmakers all of a sudden. A lot of the issue here is that the Packers lost star tight end Tucker Kraft for the year with the torn ACL, and they just seem like they don't know what to do now. The offense was kind of focused around Kraft, and now that he's gone, they seem lost. But we know Reed should help fill the void, as he's a dynamic, versatile, explosive receiver that can do a lot of different things well. And I think what's huge for Green Bay is that Reed can eat in the underneath game, right? The underneath area of the field, similar to what we saw from Tucker before he got hurt. And let's not forget, Reed had the highest passer rating when targeted among all receivers last year, along with ranking 3rd in yards per target, 7th in yards per reception, 19th in yards per route run, and has led Green Bay in receptions and yards over the last 2 seasons. This is another player where you're betting on talent, you're betting on the situation. I still do think Green Bay has a good offense. I think Jordan Love is a really good quarterback. Jayden Reed's only 25 years old. He's not like he's some older receiver that has nothing left in the tank. No, Reed hasn't even shown us his ceiling yet. I think that adding him now onto your team is a no-brainer. Stash him, and he could definitely be a league winner down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs when you need him the most, especially because the Packers do have a very favorable schedule to close out the year. All right, moving on to our next guy. Brian Robinson Jr. is one of the best stashes in all of fantasy football right now, and is coming off another productive game in week 10, 8 carries, 41 yards, touchdown, 5.1 yards per carry, 11 and a half fantasy points, and has scored a touchdown in back-to-back games and is somehow only rostered in 37% of sleeper leagues. And that's honestly mind-blowing to me. That number should be north of 50% at least. And with the 49ers having their eye on the playoffs, maybe they start to preserve their future Hall of Fame back in Christian McCaffrey, especially in games where they have a big lead. Maybe they start to pull back on his workload. And with the return of starting quarterback Brock Purdy, looks like Ricky Pearsall is going to be back this week as well. Maybe they're going to be winning more games where they don't need as much of Christian McCaffrey. Like CMC leads the NFL right now in touches at 249 and is on pace for one of the biggest workloads of his career. Like, let's just be realistic for a second. CMC is 29 years old, and he's shown us in the past that he can't stay healthy at times. Not saying he's going to get hurt, not saying I want him to get hurt, but if he does get hurt, Brian Robinson Jr. is going to have massive value in fantasy football. Obviously, B-Rob doesn't have much value right now. That's why this is a stash video. You leave him on your bench, and if CMC does go down, Brian Robinson is a top 12 fantasy running back the rest of the way. These are the game-changing players that you want on your bench. You don't want the fourth string wide receiver that never plays, right? You want someone who, if the starter goes down, you have a league winner on your hands, and that is what Brian Robinson is. So if you have a bench spot, clear out a bench spot. Make a bench spot for B-Rob because he's also a good player on a good 49ers offense. Like, he would absolutely be dominant in fantasy in this Kyle Shanahan ecosystem if given the opportunity. All right, moving on to our next guy, Luther Burden. I'm convinced at this point that Burden would be a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy football right now if he was just on a team where he was the number one or even the number two option in the passing game. The issue isn't Burden. It's not the talent. The problem is he's running as the number 4 receiver in Chicago right now. He's buried on this depth chart, and I feel like that decision by this coaching staff is becoming more and more stupid by the minute. It's something that likely changes, I would hope, sooner rather than later, as head coach Ben Johnson even came out recently in an interview and said that the rookie deserves a larger role. Luther is coming off his highest snap share of the season in week 10 at 49%, so we like to see that. He reeled in 3 catches for 51 yards on 3 targets, 8.1 fantasy points, and only 2 receivers in the NFL are posting 3+ yards per route run on 100+ routes. Burden is doing that only in 66 routes run. That just tells us how efficient the rookie receiver has been so far this year. And he's also sporting an impressive 23% target per route run, along with the team high 136.4 passer rating when targeted. This is a big, fast, explosive player who's a yak monster. If any rookie receiver could be the next Amon-Ra St. Brown to close out this year, I think it's Burden. And if you remember St. Brown's rookie year from weeks 1 to 12, he was the wide receiver 75 in fantasy. From weeks 13 to 18, wide receiver 2 in fantasy. I mean, obviously, Burden probably can't be the wide receiver 2 in fantasy unless an injury occurred to DJ Moore or Rome Odunze, but he could be really good for fantasy. He doesn't need to be a top 3 receiver. He could be a top 20 receiver in fantasy if given more work, more volume. And what's kind of funny about that comparison is we know Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator in Detroit when Amon-Ra St. Brown had that sensational rookie year. I don't know. I just have a feeling here Burden is really special to me, and it seems like he is trending upwards. Everything that you're seeing from him on the football field has been impressive. I feel like he flashes a couple times every single week. Everything you're hearing from the coaching staff, from the head coach off the field has also been promising. I just feel like the rookie is coming. I think he's going to have a really strong second half of the year, and I don't understand why he's only rostered in 18% of sleeper leagues. Like, this is one of the biggest names who could break out the second half of the year that a lot of people just aren't talking about. Like, play Burden over DJ Moore. What has DJ Moore done this year for Chicago? Like, I get Rome Odunze deserves his role, but let Burden eat in the slot, and I think he could be really dominant for this Bears offense. And you want to stash him. You want to get him on your bench now before he has that big, huge breakout game, and then it's too late, right? So get him on your bench. wait for him to go off because I do think it's coming. All right, moving on to our next guy, Blake Corum. He's going to continue to be on these stash videos, and for a good reason, because he's continuing to eat into Kyren Williams' workload over the last couple of weeks, as he has 12 plus carries in 3 straight games, along with seeing his highest snap share of the season at 37%. In week 10, 26 snaps went to Corum compared to 40 for Kyren, and Blake finished with 13 carries for 56 yards, 4.3 yards per carry, 5.6 fantasy points. Obviously not a big fantasy day. He did see a carry inside the 5-yard line, and while he wasn't able to convert it into a touchdown, it shows you that this Rams coaching staff trusts him in important situations, and Corum ranks first in the NFL right now in carries of 10 plus yards. Kyren Williams ranks 30th. So I'm not saying that Corum is going to break out and overtake Kyren. That's just not happening anymore. But I think that this backfield could become closer to a 50-50 split as the weeks go on. And if it does become a 50-50 split, Blake could have some standalone flex value to close out the year because they're on one of the best offenses in football in LA. And anytime you can get a running back in this ecosystem, you add him onto your team, and he could be serviceable down the stretch if Kyren stays healthy. But if Kyren were to ever get hurt, Blake Corum would be a top 10 fantasy back the rest of the way. Again, that's same with Brian Robinson. You add guys where if the starter went down, you have an absolute league winner on your hands. I just don't get why more people are not stashing Corum on their bench now. Kyren is the starter. Kyren will continue to probably see the majority of the work in this backfield. But if he were to get hurt, or if Sean McVay decides that maybe we give the player that's running the football better more work, then you're going to be really happy that Blake is sitting on your bench. So I'd be stashing him away now. All right, moving on to our next guy, Devon Vele, who's now the wide receiver 2 on the Saints. As we know, they just traded away Rashid Shaheed to the Seahawks. I'm expecting Vele to see a ton of work on this New Orleans offense as they traded away a 4th and a 7th round pick to the Broncos to get him on the roster. That means they probably saw something that they really liked in the young receiver, and he's expected to see a lot more volume going forward. The Saints offense also looked better under rookie quarterback in week 10, Tyler Shuck, who looked solid, poised. He was pretty efficient overall. Vele didn't really do much. 1 reception for 15 yards. But what's notable is he ran 100% of the routes. You love to see that. This is a player that's in year 2 in the NFL. He is 27 years old, but he doesn't have a ton of experience. We haven't seen what he's truly capable of. But in an expanded role with the Saints, he could be very productive. This is a bigger receiver sitting at 6'5", and he could be one of those guys that comes out of nowhere that no one's expecting, that all of a sudden is winning people fantasy leagues down the stretch. And he's got all the talent, all the intangibles that you would want in a receiver. And one thing we know about the Saints, what are they going to continue to do a ton this year, is throw the football. They're a very pass-happy team. And I like to bet on young, talented receivers who I think can take a nice leap the second half of the year, especially in an expanded role on a pass-happy offense that we just mentioned with Kellen Moore as the play caller, who happens to be very creative, very innovative. He's going to find ways to get Vele the football. This is a little bit more of a deeper stash, I will admit, but if you do have a bench spot, I would consider picking him up. All right, moving on to our next guy, Keaton Mitchell, running back for the Ravens. This dude is lightning in a bottle. It seems like every time he touches the football, something good happens. He is blazing 4.3 speed. He's a very nice compliment to Derrick Henry, who is kind of clearly starting to decline. He has taken a step back a little bit this season. I think it would be smart for Baltimore to give Mitchell a larger role in this offense, and I think it's going to happen in Week 11 because running back Justice Hill, who's dealing with a toe injury, probably isn't going to play. So Mitchell, who made the most of his opportunities in Week 10, 4 carries for 31 yards, 7.8 yards per carry. And let's not forget, Keaton tore his ACL in December of 2023, but before that, he was having a really nice year, and his best game of the season came in Week 9 against the Seahawks, where he racked up 9 carries for 138 yards, a touchdown that featured a 60-yard run, 20.4 fantasy points. Mitchell is an efficient, explosive, uber-talented running back. He's like a Devon Achane. He can take any play to the house. I would be stashing Mitchell on your bench now. I think he's a very high upside stash. If Derrick Henry goes down, I think he would be a top 20 fantasy running back. And if they decide to use Justice Hill less and they give Mitchell a bigger role the rest of the way, then he could have some nice flex value as well. So he has multiple ways to be fantasy relevant this year, and we've already seen his ceiling. We know what he's capable of. We know the upside that he has. Again, these are the type of players you want on your bench. All right, let's talk about some other strong stashes. Tyler Algier, if he's somehow available after his monster performance that he's coming off, I would be stashing him. If something were to ever happen to Bijan, Bashal Tutin, probably not going to have a breakout campaign that we've been hoping for, but if Travis Etienne goes down, Tutin would have a massive role. Brenton Strange for the Jaguars, tight end. Once he comes off IR, he's going to have a role. Joe Burrow, if he's somehow out there, like get Burrow on your bench, stash him away in your IR spot because he's going to be playing pretty soon here. Alec Pierce, who's playing phenomenal. I think he's going to continue to ball out. If he's somehow available, I would be stashing him, adding him as the Colts are now on bye. Marshawn Lloyd, potentially running back for the Packers. If he can stay healthy, he could be an interesting add. Tajay Spears, Titans are on bye, but if he's out there, I would be adding him. And Sean Tucker for the Bucks. I know Bucky Irving is practicing. We don't know if he's going to play, but Tucker is a nice add regardless. That's all I have for you guys today. Really appreciate every one of you watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.